Hi, Nick. Just saw your post about performance or language learning measurements, and I just want to make some comments about that. Reminds me why I stopped studying classical dead languages many, many, many years ago. I mean, I still know them and do it, but I didn't want to focus on those too much because they aren't living, right? And they're not living language that people natively speak. And so you can only measure those by these statistics, right? Of, how many verbs you've learned and you can conjugate correctly. And you can do declensions and nouns and all that. It's the only way you can actually measure that because no one speaks these languages. You only use them in very specific contexts, like Latin or Greek. I mean, the, the, the Koine Greek or, Latin. I mean, these are languages that aren't spoken anymore, right? So, and it makes me interested with you. It's kind of interesting that you said that, what motivates you to do and how can you speak in a real context rather than just, what is your performance learning for the week or for the month or whatever. And it makes me think of two or three different situations. um, I'll mention probably my kids-in-law. So it's funny that my daughter, my partner's daughter, she moved to the Canada, to English speaking Canada. They're from France, and they moved to English speaking Canada 6 months ago. They only had basic English, and she and her partner husband, and she has an MBA. She has a bachelor's degree in selling, an MBA. But she's very one of those thinkers. You got to think, right? And she's always fearful of saying things, right? And so when we get to visit them in New York or back in May, I was trying to measure their ability by if they could go to the counter and actually buy something, right? Rent a bike or something. I wasn't going to do it for all these. My partner, she's French, and her kids. I want to see what they could actually do if they could actually how they could speak in English after a few months. And so she's struggling a lot to do that. Now, her partner, he's a sports coach, and so he moved to Canada with her, and he's doing really, really, really well. Why? Because he works in several gyms, and he has a limited vocabulary, what he needs to learn to be able to speak in English. A limited amount of nouns, right? Biceps, thighs, But I mean, these are a certain amount of just body parts, and he has a few verbs to learn, right? And he's a coach and certain CrossFit things, so he only has a certain amount of things he has to learn, and he's constantly using it. He doesn't care. He makes mistakes all the time. He doesn't care if it's the conjugation of his verbs or whatever. He doesn't care, right? He doesn't care he's got a subject verb agreement. He doesn't care, right? And he's doing it really, really well because he is practicing, and speaking every day in his job and stuff. So you can see and he is just like going for it, right? He loves it. But his partner and my partner's daughter is just really struggling with this, and she actually works in a French school, so she's not getting a lot of time to practice, right? Because she's fearful, right? And it all makes me think of when I went to Holland back 2 years ago. Yeah, about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. And I went to go visit my cousin, and who was there for a week, and I decided to stay an extra week. And I hired someone to help me learn Dutch. And I mean, I know enough German to get by pretty well, pretty well. And but I actually made a playlist. I'm not going to explain everything because I made a playlist on my YouTube of how to learn Dutch in 1 week from a linguist point of view, right? So I showed my method of learning that language within a week. Now, I couldn't do everything, but I set some goals, very specific goals, and they were that I needed to be able to be able to say all the numbers and letters and numbers, be able to spell out words and do all that within the first week, and read a text, okay, and read it out loud, which I did, and I was able to master all the numbers and letters pretty well, and read business cards and stuff. And to be able to say, if I had to make a phone call, I could make a reservation, right? And I would need to be able to do all the salutations, greetings, hello, how you doing, all these kind of things, and both getting to know someone and leaving. And I made it also that I would have to be able to order food and buy stamps and all this stuff and find my way to the toilet somewhere. Um, I made sure that I put myself in context. So every day I'd be working on these things, and every day we practice it. And I'd actually go out and do the thing, right? And we'd actually, the person I hired, we'd actually we go to a Subway sandwich place, and we work on stuff, and then I go buy the sandwiches, right? And and if I was able to buy the sandwiches, that's all that mattered, right? It didn't matter how I pronounced everything perfectly or not. It's just did I get the sandwiches, right? Was I able to do that? Was I? And so I made I made a playlist on my YouTube channel on how to learn Dutch in a week. Now, this requires having some knowledge of phonetics and phonology because I specifically showed how to do this from a phonological approach, right, to start with. How to find out the sounds in the language and how to find out what sounds are not in the language and doing that. So that shows and how to build up the vocabulary pretty quickly and all that. So I made that and I'll point to that here. And I think I made 5, 6, 7 videos there. All I don't remember the length, but I just explained the actual way I did this. And this is a method that's used a lot for training linguists to go out to traditionally oral languages. I taught a lot of linguists how to go to Africa and Caribbean countries where the languages are non-spoken or they're not written, and how to learn those languages. That's also used in South America, the same principle, and how to go out, learn those languages in a monolingual context. You don't really have a bridge language to help you out, and how to figure out that language really quickly to build, and then make it spelling and orthographic system for it, right, afterwards, and then go into literacy and then teach people reading all that. But what I did is I put this thing on steroids, right, for a week and see what can I do for a language. And it was already written, but I used some principles. So I just kind of put the thing in 7th gear, right? So that was based on the same principle of not measuring. It's measuring the way to practice it, what it could do, go out and do the things. And I was doing things at McDonald's, right? We're doing learning all the numbers and stuff at the little kiosks, right? Stuff and the buying the food and all this stuff and learn how to read and stuff based on the book at Happy Meal at McDonald's worked really well because it's a simple book. It was about Emily Earhart for the planes, and so it was really simple to understand. And I could practice my spelling, could practice the numbers, could practice the pronunciation, and by the end of the week, I was able to prove to a group of people that had seen I couldn't read or say anything at the beginning of the week, the end of the week before. Within 1 week, I was able to read a text in a traditional old Dutch. I mean, it wasn't old Dutch, but it wasn't colloquial Dutch. And we read that text and be able to read it and be understood, right? And they all said, "Wow, that's the cool thing." 2 sentences, right? Which is hard to do in a week. Learn how to read a language. And then do all the greetings and buy some food and do all that. I was pretty happy by the week. My goals were set, and I was able to, like I said, I was able to do the numbers and the letters and say them all and everything, and get that. Read business cards, right, basically. So say them, pronounce them out loud. So that these are pretty practical things, and it's all based on this idea of needing to have fluency and have certain things that aren't just measurements of 91% or whatever. It's can you do the thing? Can you do the action? Can you go out and do it? So. That was a good test, and I've been actually using the same method for learning Russian and Romanian. So and I was able to do it in the same amount of time with at least the phonology for the next part of view. I did explain that in that video chapter. So go check it out and let me know what you think.